The union of a man and a woman is as old as civilization itself, and marriage of some kind can be found in virtually every society. So let's go on a journey discovering how marriage has changed from the pre-Christian era to modern times, and how marriage became assimilated into Christianity, and the effect of Christianity on marriage around the world.
There have been many different things written and said about marriage, from the sweetly inspirational to the hilariously cynical. But what many of them have in common is that they sound like they express a universal and timeless truth, when in fact, nearly everything about marriage, from its main purpose, to the kinds of relationships it covers, to the rights and responsibilities involved, has varied greatly between different eras, cultures, and social classes. So let's take a quick look at the evolution of marriage. Pair bonding and raising children is as old as humanity itself. With the rise of sedentary agricultural societies about 10,000 years ago, marriage was also a way of securing rights to land and property by designating children born under certain circumstances as rightful heirs. As these societies became larger and more complex, marriage became not just a matter between individuals and families, but also an official institution governed by religious and civil authorities. And it was already well established by 2100 BC, when the earliest surviving written laws in the Mesopotamian Code of Ur-Nammu provided many specifics governing marriage, from punishments for adultery to the legal status of children born to slaves. Many ancient civilizations allowed some form of multiple simultaneous marriage, and even today, less than a quarter of the world's hundreds of different cultures prohibit it. But just because something was allowed doesn't mean it was always possible. Demographic realities, as well as the link between marriage and wealth, meant that even though rulers and elites in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Israel had multiple concubines or wives, most commoners could only afford one or two, tending towards monogamy in practice. In other places, the tables were turned, and a woman could have multiple husbands, as in the Himalayan mountains, where all brothers in a family marrying the same woman kept the small amount of fertile land from being constantly divided into new households. Marriages could vary not only in the number of people they involved, but the types of people as well. Although the names and laws for such arrangements may have differed, publicly recognized same-sex unions have popped up in various civilizations throughout history. Mesopotamian prayers included blessings for such couples, while Native American two-spirit individuals had relationships with both sexes. The first instances of such arrangements actually being called marriage come from Rome, where the emperors Nero and Elagabalus both married men in public ceremonies, with the practice being explicitly banned in 342 AD. But similar traditions survived well into the Christian era, such as adelphopoiesis or brother-making in Orthodox churches, and even an actual marriage between two men recorded in 1061 at a small chapel in Spain. Nor was marriage even necessarily between two living people. Ghost marriages, where either the bride or groom were deceased, were conducted in China to continue family lineages or appease restless spirits, and some tribes in Sudan maintained similar practices. Despite all these differences, a lot of marriages throughout history did have one thing in common. With crucial matters like property and reproduction at stake, they were way too important to depend on young love. Especially among the upper classes, matches were often made by families or rulers. But even for commoners who had some degree of choice, the main concern was practicality. The modern idea of marriage as being mainly about love and companionship only emerged in the last couple of centuries. With industrialization, urbanization, and the growth of the middle class, more people became independent from large extended families and were able to support a new household on their own. Encouraged by new ideas from the Enlightenment, people began to focus on individual happiness and pursuits, rather than familial duty or wealth and status, at least some of the time. And this focus on individual happiness soon led to other transformations, such as easing restrictions on divorce and more people marrying at a later age. So as we continue to debate the role and definition of marriage in the modern world, it might help to keep in mind that marriage has always been shaped by society, and as a society's structure, values, and goals change over time, its ideas of marriage will continue to change along with them.
Because of fossil evidence, we now know that mating behavior in our earliest human history mainly focused on the most powerful and dominant males securing sexual access to multiple female partners. As time wore on, equality and shared responsibilities between sexes emerged. We began seeing the beginnings of romantic love, but that wasn't until the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. Marriage, in ancient times, was a contract. The female exchanged sex and an offspring for meat and protection that the male provided. That was the foundation of marriage among early humans. Earliest marriages were arranged by the families, and even today this is still done, especially in Indian cultures where the bride's family would often arrange her marriage. And, like the video mentioned, different tribes may have arranged for marriages between their members to create social alliances. The original purpose of such a marriage was to produce heirs and to join families for monetary gains or power. By 1000 BC, patriarchy had become the dominant social system that established a standard which viewed women as personal possessions. What was emerging in Greece during 1000 BC was the ideal of complete fidelity. Cheating was not allowed. Fast forward to the Victorian era, where the ideas of love and marriage did not mix well, and more often than not, were not in the same sphere. The perfect woman was a mother and a wife who was pure and subordinate. In the last decades of the 19th century through the 20th century, more women were working and realizing both economic power and freedom. Women's rights started increasing, and many women, whether rich or poor, no longer relied on her father to give her away. Simultaneously, men were able to choose their own bride, not out of necessity, but out of desire. From then on, the idea of a marriage of love emerged.
Alright, so as far as how marriage became a sacrament, before the 11th century there were no church regulations regarding marriage in the Roman Catholic Church. And for the first few centuries of Christianity, Christian communities took up family customs of marriage in their homes. Now, the church relied on the government of Rome to regulate marriage and divorce between Christians and non-Christians. After the fall of the Roman Empire, though, the church began to take legal control over marriage and made it an official church function. In the Middle Ages, Augustine led the church to believe in the sacramentality of marriage, and in the 12th century, the idea of marriage as a sacrament, a union now regulated by the church, was established. The Council of Trent declared marriage as one of the 7 sacraments of the church, and the Catholic Church decided that the spouses themselves are ministers of the sacrament through Jesus.
Hello, my name is Lourdes Chavez. I have been a marriage annulment advocate for the Archdiocese of Miami for the last 20 years. I work out of St. Gregory's Catholic Church. Obviously, in order to know about annulments, I had to learn a lot about marriage and the canons that are combined with the marriage vows. Canon 1055 of the Code of Canon Law defines marriage as an exclusive covenant between one man and one woman, which is to be entered freely for the purpose of establishing a community of life and love, and for the procreation and education of children. This covenant between two baptized people has been raised by Christ our Lord to the dignity of a sacrament. It's also important to remember that marriage is not the wedding day. because a lot of planning goes into that wedding day ceremony, and yet marriage is for life. We have to realize that at times people should not even attempt marriage before we know each other, or the two of them knows each other. Both partners have to be very aware of the person with whom they're getting married. We have to also understand that marriage will include the combination of two different families. He will bring his upbringing into his wedding, and she will bring her upbringing into the wedding as well. Then from then on, the marriage will take place by being able to merge both of these costumes. Throughout the years, there have been many different ways of going into the exchange of vows in the church. I remember for some time the bride and groom were brought in under a big, usually lace veil. Then somebody else will bring a big cord that will make like a figure 8 between the bride and the groom. Also, the groom will bring some coins. They would be either gold or silver, depending on the financial situation. There would be an exchange of coins that would go from the groom's hands into the bride's hands and onto a plate. There's also the customs on the Greek Orthodox Church, of which I know. The first marriage for the couple would be under a big crown that is usually held on top of their heads throughout the ceremony. I also do know that if there is an annulment, which is done in a very different way than we do it in the Catholic Church, the Greek Orthodox would get into a second marriage with somebody else, but they will never be able to marry under the crown.
The real value of marriage is marriage itself. The creation of a loving partnership becomes the primary reason to marry. Marriage should be based on equality. Both parties should respect its say in the matrimony. The Council of Trent declared that, from the beginning of the Bible, it teaches that marriage is a part of God's plan.
In many ways, marriage has changed from how our ancestors would have viewed it. Marriage isn't so much about the binding deed for land ownership, nor is it so much about gaining a higher status in society. In other ways, however, marriage still retains some practices we might find outdated, such as the practice of a woman's family paying for the wedding, reflecting back to the dowry system. With the church's loosening hold on society at large, marriage around the world isn't so much as becoming one flesh as to answering the question, do I want to spend the rest of my life with this person? Even with talk and speculation regarding same-sex marriage within the church, the rights and meaning of matrimony still haven't changed from the time when the church ruled most of Europe. In short, matrimony as a sacrament within the Roman Catholic Church still retains its sanctity and meaning as obtained from Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31-32, which states, "A man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh."
Life has begun from this moment. You are